Making noise, Linda. Hey there, it's Eric Rhoads, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine, and welcome to day number, what day is this? I always tend to forget. It's all kind of blending together. It's day 143. We've been here live 143 days in a row. I don't know how we've pulled this off, but anyway, thank you for being here with us if you're still here. We have a guest today, world famous art historian, Joan Stern. Hey, Joan.
Hey, Eric, how are you?
I'm terrific. We are excited about your appearance today. You were a big hit on Plein Air Live. You had a lot of great information that you disseminated, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to have you on. What are you going to talk about today?
Well, you know, a lot of people ask me. I do a lot of judging. I've judged over 120 shows, national, international, local.
Wow.
And they always ask me, well, what is it you judge on? What are the bases you judge on? What should I do to improve my art, basically? So I thought we'd talk a little bit about what the judge looks for.
Okay. No, that'll be very helpful. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to drop off. We're going to take John off screen for a minute. I'm going to do a few announcements, and then we're going to come back to that. I've got a lot of questions about that because I'm curious as well, so I'm looking forward to that. And maybe if we get a little chance, maybe you can show us a couple of pieces of art too. I see a lot of art in the background. Maybe you can get your assistant Linda to pull a couple off the wall so that we can show them.
We'll do it.
I jest. It's not your assistant. She runs the roost.
Well, she's also on crutches right now. So.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, she had a mild operation, but she's on crutches.
Okay, we won't make her work then. Okay, we'll be back with Joan Stern in just a minute. And anyway, thank you guys for being here. It's been so much fun. I'm trying to trying to reinvent myself a little bit. You know what I talked about yesterday is that we started doing this. Now everybody's doing it. And so I'm trying to come up with new ways of doing it. This is why I've decided to start adding the interviews every day. I did segments of art marketing for a lot of days. I'll come back to some of that as well. But I'm trying to shake it up, make it a little bit different. But the whole goal of these dailies is to keep your head in the game, right? There's so much going on in the world and so much change. And I suspect a lot more will be going on between, you know, now and the end of the world or whatever happens. But I think that most importantly is we want to make sure that we monitor our own health, our own mindset, our own behavior. And if we sit there and doom scroll, and I am guilty of it too. Sometimes I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is I check, whatever social media I happen to be looking at the moment. And then, the negativity starts and it's like, I don't want to read any of this. And so I have a rule, and this rule serves me really, really well. And my rule is that if anyone is talking politics, which I hate, and by the way, either side of the aisle, if they're getting into vitriol whatsoever, I just delete them. I just don't want that negativity in my life. I take it out of my life completely. We get enough of it as it is. And I just, friends are supposed to be friends. I don't want to sit there and listen to that kind of thing. So hate me if you will. But anyway, that's how I keep my head in the right place. And I try very hard not to watch the news. And the reality is that any news that's worth hearing about, you're going to hear about it from somebody anyway. And last night, now we're back in Austin, Texas. We've been at the lake for the summer, and we don't have a TV up there. And so it's really kind of nice. And I guess we have a TV we can watch like DVDs, but we don't have a connection, right? We don't have a satellite connection or a cable or anything like that. So we can't watch the news. We could watch it online, but we choose not to. And so it's really wonderful because you get a break. Well, last night we're sitting around here. We've got the kids home. Their kids are off seeing their friends before they go to college. And so, I turned the news on. Next thing you know, I'd watched it for 3 hours and I felt like a zombie. It's just not something I want to do anymore. So it comes off now, stays off the rest of the summer. We'll see what happens when we get back here in the winter. But I want to try to keep my head in the right place. And it just is too much negativity. In the comments section, every day we're giving away prizes. This week we're giving away every day a digital subscription to Plein Air Magazine. Plein Air Magazine is, this just boggles my mind. a magazine about a term that nobody knows, plein air, right? A magazine about a term nobody knows is the #1 selling art magazine in America in the art and photography category. It outsells photography magazines and art magazines. And yet we don't put any type on the covers. We put our logo down in the corner, but most magazines will have this whole area filled up with what they call call outs, right? Things that try to get you to pick it up to read inside. We want to highlight these beautiful pieces of art, so we don't put any type on the covers. And nobody knows the term plein air, so it boggles my mind that it's a top-selling art magazine. But we're thankful for that. A lot of people have told us they've gone to Barnes & Noble lately because they just opened up again. And well, they have not reordered for a while because, I mean, they've reordered, they're coming, but so they're still selling old copies. So the best thing is just get your own subscription. It'll cost you $40 a year. You can get a magazine like People magazine for $3 a year. That's because they have all this massive advertising support. We can't do that. We keep our quality high, our paper high. That's why it costs you $40 a year. And by the way, we barely make, I think we make $3 or $4 on that. It's not much, but anyway, it would be nice for you to have a subscription. We are very excited because we're going into Michael's stores. I have never seen an art magazine in Michael's stores. Maybe they're there and I just never saw them, but I know we're going to be near the cash registers, and starting in October, we're going to be in 278 Michael's stores with Plein Air magazine. That is really exciting for us, and so we hope the other art stores catch on and realize this plein air movement is really happening, and it's something that you should be a part of. And anyway, we hope you'll support us on that. So what's going on? Well, first off, I want to mention that I'm taking a group of artists to Russia. And that's going to be in September, a year from now. So when we go to Russia, we're going to be, it's going to be 50 people, no more than 50, because I can't get hotel rooms in the smaller towns. And so we're going to be painting in St. Petersburg, Russia. We're going to also do touring because you can't go to Russia and not see the cool sites. And so we're going to see some of the palaces. We're definitely going to the museums. Then we're going to some of the really special art-related places like the Russian Art Museum. We have a private entry into the Hermitage, which is the biggest museum in the world. And so we are going to be in there privately when it's closed, which is only because we have good connections there. The director there happens to be a friend of mine for the last 10, 15 years. And so we're going to be able to do that. We also are going to the home and studio of Ilya Repin, or Rapin, as they say there. And we're going to be going to the small villages throughout Russia, including the great academic Dasha, which is where Catherine the Great founded a place for plein air painting to take place. Plein air has been part of their history forever. And we're going to go there and paint in that area. That's where all the greats painted. We're also going to another area where all the greats painted. And then we're going to go to Moscow. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And Russia is one of those places, for the first time, you want to go with somebody who knows it. It's perfectly safe. We feel totally safe. I've been there many times. I was totally scared and intimidated the first time I went, but I got very comfortable very fast once I realized that all the TV stuff that we hear about is not necessarily true. So that's going to be at paintrussia.com, and we don't have the pricing there yet. We're working on it. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to be worth it. And we are going to have about 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. I want to mention to you that we are seeing now we're at almost 700 people signed up for Realism Live, which is our online conference. And we've got a really terrific lineup of people, including Dan Sprick, Juliet Aristides, Daniel Gerhartz, Rose Franson, Graydon Parrish, Josh LaRock, and there will be many, 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 many more. We've got a little bit of time. We've got invitations out. We're working with people. We're going to be making some major announcements. And so you want to get signed up for that. That's going to be really cool. We have interactivity, and we promised interactivity when we did Realism Live, and we actually, we're not doing our whole thing on a Zoom call. We wanted better technology than that. But we do have some moments where we have breakout rooms. We go to Zoom and you get to know 4, 5, 6, 7 people in your group, and then the groups change often. We also have a cocktail hour at night where we all kind of talk and communicate. I interview different people, and we also do painting together online, and we're going to have live models painting together, and we're going to try to hit the world's record for the most number of people on a live art conference ever in history. We're anticipating about 24,000 people. So whether or not we hit that, we don't know, but we think it's going to be huge. Got a couple things going on that should make that happen. So make sure you get signed up for Realism Live, because these are phenomenal people, and it is not abstract, it's realism. All right, so we may have another one on Abstract Live for people who do abstract someday. We are going to do one called Watercolor Live, and that's going to be in January. So I haven't got much more information on that, but please know that that is coming. All right, so today we have a very special guest, and that is Joan Stern. Joan Stern is the Director Emeritus of the Irvine Museum at the University of California, Irvine. Did I get that right?
Well, it's just Director Emeritus of the Irvine Museum. I'm retired from the University of California.
Retired for about, what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah, so how's it feel?
Well, I get to travel all over the world. I mean, I got so much free time.
Well, that's going to be fun. Yeah, you don't have to show up, but I know you, and knowing you, you're probably working on 2 or 3 books. You're probably working on some contests. You're probably doing some judging. So what kind of things are you working on that you can talk about?
Well, I'm working on 2 series of lectures. One is a series of 5 for the Bowers Museum here in Santa Ana in Orange County. And it'll be on California art. In their collection, and they have a large collection and a really good selection of women artists. So there'll be a lecture on women artists of California. And I'm doing essentially the same theme, but different images, of course, for the Hilbert Museum, which is in Orange. And also because their period is from really the 1930s up until the 1950s, there's a large selection of women artists that came to the front after the Depression, and those will be included, of course. Then I'm doing one which possibly will be in Plein Air Live.
Realism Live.
Realism Live. I did one for Plein Air.
Yeah, you did. You did 2 different ones for Plein Air Live.
Yes, I did. So realism is one of my favorite topics. I think the best thing you can do as a budding artist is learn to draw. And you're there to capture life. It's objective art. There's something in front of you that you want to record, and something beautiful, something meaningful. So I'm working on maybe another book. I just published the one on the Fleischer collection, and there's a couple of other collections that I may be publishing. And then I'm doing a couple of lectures in the near future for the California Art Club, and I just did one for the Plein Air Painters, Laguna Beach Plein Air Painters Association. So it is busy, but it's such fun.
You have dealt with a lot of collectors who have significant collections. What is the common thread between these people? What does it take to develop a significant collection of art? And is it required to have a lot of money? How does that all work?
Well, there are different types of collectors. There's the serious collectors, and there's the collectors that collect because it's maybe something their friends are doing, and you can tell the difference immediately when you visit them. They'll go up to a painting, and the serious one will tell you exactly who it's by, what the subject is, when it was painted. The other ones will say, yeah, I got that at an auction and I paid so much money for it. So it depends, but the serious collectors get to know as much as they can because they really want to have a first-rate collection like the Fleischer collection is. And it's having a passion and mostly having the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have heard stories of people who bought right at the right time and got in early on certain things. The nice thing about contemporary artists is that you can get work that is every bit as high quality as some of the historic California plein air painters, for instance. and you can get it at a fraction of the price, and these people will go down in history as great painters. And imagine if you had bought a Ken Oster painting or something while Ken was alive. So I think that that's something you and I have talked. I want to build a museum, and something I intend to do at some point, a museum of plein air and a museum of realism together. But I know that's a tall order, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And you've introduced me to a lot of people to help me with that. So, but one thing that I've noticed is that in the plein air circuit, Plein Air magazine is one of those magazines that bridges the gap between the collector and the artist. The art galleries oftentimes will say to us, well, I won't advertise in there because it's a magazine for artists, because we will have demonstrations in the magazine on how a painting is accomplished. And yet the same theory would not necessarily apply if you were going to the Laguna Plein Air Painters annual event, where you got hundreds of collectors who are piling in, and they're watching the artist. They want to see how the work is done. So what's your best advice for collecting artwork and kind of building out your collection?
I have one ironclad rule is buy what you want to live with. Buy something that'll enrich your life. Don't expect to make money on it. Don't expect to buy it and sell it. If so, you can join all the other Stearns in LA and open an art gallery. But buy it for yourself. And it is much better to buy a great painting by an unknown artist than to buy a small, junky little painting by a very famous artist. So if you're going to compete with an art dealer, you're going to be studying, you're going to be up all night reading, you're going to be going to all the auctions, and it's not worth it. Just buy what you love. I have art that I live with every day. Some of it is by friends of mine. Some of it are by people that died 50, 60, 100 years ago. And some of it may not be worth anything to anybody else. But if you buy what you like, if you have it with you, you have it around, it enriches your life, you can't go wrong. And then, the kids will make the money when they sell it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that seems to be a trend. So when we first start collecting art, or we first start learning about art, our taste is not necessarily developed. And then I'll use myself as a perfect example of that. I started buying up paintings, especially once I got into plein air and started doing my own paintings. And once I started painting, I realized that I started to understand what the artist had to go through to accomplish the skill level that they've gotten to, and the feel that they have. And so I actually appreciated art more once I started painting. But if you look at my collection, there's a lot of pieces that are sitting on a shelf in the garage now, because I don't want to put them out, because I don't feel like they live up to my current taste level. How does one develop a taste level?
Well, you learn anything else, you make mistakes. The first painting I've ever bought was in 1964. My dad was an art dealer, and there was this painting I absolutely had to have, so I bought it from him. I still have that one, but number 2 through number 38 are gone, because I keep the first one because it's nostalgia. And it's also a great painting, but it's really nostalgia. Then your tastes grow and your collection changes. And you realize that you were shopping for the wrong thing at first, that you were shopping for something that really wasn't what you wanted. And then your tastes get refined and you make mistakes. So it's my feeling is you just buy what you like, and your taste will change. They will change. The more you see art, the more you're going to recognize what it is you love in a painting and what it is you want to see for your own benefit in a painting. And you just learn. The best way to learn is to make mistakes, but you just grow.
So what makes the difference? You have the pleasure of having judged hundreds of art shows. You've selected pieces to purchase for the museum. You've written books on these artists. one of the concerns that I have right now is that a lot of paintings are all starting to look alike. And yet you can spot someone who has masterful skill level. I hate to use the word skill because that takes the magic out of it. But I can go into the Irvine Museum and see a painting that just blows me away, that some would say looks like all the others, but it has a special quality. What is the difference between a regular painting and a painting that has a special quality? Is there a way to articulate that?
Well, again, it's very much a personal taste, but there's something like 5 basic rules that I use to judge. First of all, I like paintings that are of nature, as you can see. I like outdoor paintings. I like plein air paintings. So the artist is out there for one reason, is to capture that light. Then the detail comes later, but the light is what strikes me first. And light is created by the proper placement of color. So I look for the light. Then I look for the basic things like drawing. If you're drawing a child, it's got to look like a child. If you're drawing a boat, it's got to look like a boat, and a tree, things like that. Then there are other basic things that most artists are supposed to learn in art school, at least in a traditional art school. These days, I don't think a lot of art schools even teach drawing, but a traditional art school, you learn drawing, you learn composition. You learn to guide the viewer to make them see what you, the artist, wants to see. So composition is very important. You don't want a composition where you run up into a block of trees and you can't get around it. So sometimes you'll see a painting that's just a solid row of trees, and it's like, well, what's the point? What am I supposed to look at? Then perspective. Because you are outdoors and because you are painting nature and because you are painting objects, representationals, if there's a tree, let's say, that's close by, it's got to look like it's closer than the ones in the distance. And that creates problems because you have to learn not only linear perspective, how to do the lines and how objects appear to get smaller as they're farther away from the viewer, but there's also aerial perspective. If it's a misty day, objects that are closer look quite different than objects that are farther back. Then I also look for beauty. Beauty is the toughest part because we all have our own sense of beauty. But you want the basics. If the artist is supposed to be objective, to paint what they see, then it's got to look like that. So, but again, in my personal taste, and I've looked at paintings ever since I was a kid. My father was an art dealer. The first thing I ever saw probably was a painting hanging on my bedroom wall. And you just look and look and look, and you develop your taste. So it's very important to learn the basics, certainly as an artist, but as a collector, you have to learn what it is you are looking at. You have to be able to recognize an artist that can do these 5 or 6 objectives properly. And you just, again, you learn and you develop your taste, and you live with your art. I would never sell one of my paintings. I would not, unless, when my kids went to graduate school, I had to sell a few of the paintings. I was a collector initially of what I lovingly call the dead guys. And they got to be valuable. But as I sold them to pay for education, to pay for car, I replaced them with living artists, with friends of mine. And I got to know a lot of artists, and I watched them paint. It's very important that you go to these events where they are painting right in front of you, and you watch them paint, or you go to a conference and you watch these artists paint. You listen to what they say is important, and you learn that way. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but and again, nobody's going to judge you, because if you are buying as a person for yourself, you don't have to impress anybody else. But if you're buying as a serious collector of historic art, then you're getting into all sorts of judgments and you're getting into a lot of money. So buy a great painting by an unknown artist if your budget is important, because that painting will never change. It'll always be a great painting. If you buy a lousy painting by a really important artist, the painting will always be lousy. And as soon as you get into it, you're going to want to upgrade it anyway. So if you go to auctions, be very careful, because most of the paintings there are paintings that people decided, well, I really shouldn't have bought that. I'm going to sell it and buy something better. Or it's something that, art dealers haven't been able to sell, so they finally give up, put them in auction. So be very careful at an auction. But if you buy from a living artist, it's genuine. And always have your photo taken with the artist and the painting. That's very important. That's the record that it really is by that artist. And then we've talked about this before, but you artists out there, if you're going to sign it illegibly, you're creating a lot of problems for future art historians.
That is a huge issue. I can remember, I can't remember the specifics, but I remember that I had this old painting and I could not. It was a great old painting, but I could never figure out who painted it. Nobody could ever figure out who painted it. So it has no value because you can't read the signature. And also, the signatures tend to be, as paintings darken over time and paint darkens over time, signatures oftentimes blend in. That I have a very large, very famous unnamed painting, and we think the signature is in there somewhere, but we don't know where and cannot find it. And so that painting is going to be of less value until I can find that signature.
Well, and then again, you and I have given this advice to artists. Write something on the back. Put the title. Put where it is. Put the date. All these things are important, because in the future, you got a painting that nobody knows anything about, and it ends up in a Goodwill store until somebody just buys it to cover up a crack in the wall or something.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I want to go further than that. I think this is a really good time to do that. And that is, first off, if I'm with another painter, let's say me and Mitch Netto and Charles White are together painting, which we spent a lot of time together painting. If we're out at a vineyard in Napa Valley, not only do I take pictures of us painting and us by our paintings and us together and so on, but I always write on the back of the painting as I stood next to Charles White and Mitch Netto, and we painted this vineyard together, because someday someone will find those other two paintings that were done at that same location. And if they did that, the puzzle pieces fit together. And, one of those guys becomes famous, and then, suddenly it lifts everybody's boat. So I like to do that. The other thing my brother came up with, which I think is good, I don't do this, but I should, because of the changing landscape, especially out in Southern California, for instance, write down the GPS coordinates. You can get into your phone and actually get the GPS coordinates off of it. Just Google how to do it. Because if you write the GPS coordinates, somebody will someday be able to go back to where that shopping mall is and say, look, this is what this hill used to look like. Yeah.
Because, we have paintings in the Irvine Museum collection of places in Southern California that essentially no longer exist because they've been changed and they've been covered over. They're buildings, they're shopping centers. So we occasionally come across a painting that has nothing on the back. And then we have people come up and tell us, oh, I know exactly where that is. And then the next guy says, no, it's a different. And it's, we have a rule, the first one where the photograph wins. But it does make a difference. And we have paintings in that collection that show what Orange County looked like way before development. And it's an historical document. Plus, you have old photographs that say the missions of California. Very interesting, but they're in black and white. A painting done in 1900, let's say, of the Mission Capistrano is in brilliant color. It's like you're actually there. It makes a big difference. It's not just a recording an historical period. It's also making it beautiful.
Right.
And making it something you want to have around all the time.
So how do you feel about plein air studies versus studio paintings?
Well, again, my idea of a plein air painting is not that it was completely painted outdoors, which is not often the case, but that it was started outdoors. So I consider the little plein air sketch, the on-the-spot painting, certainly to be a plein air sketch. But the larger painting that came out of the studio based on one or two or three of those sketches from that same spot, I consider that to be plein air by inheritance, basically. So again, it's the light is what's important in my mind, getting very specific moment of time. There's a famous quote by Claude Monet. He says, "Oh, I'm a half an hour late. I'll come back tomorrow." He was looking for a very specific period of time, and that's dedication.
Yeah. So what kind of issues do you run into in authenticating paintings? We talked about signatures. The signature is illegible on the front. Do you think that an artist should abandon the idea of a quote unquote signature and make their name more clear, or can they do their signature on the front and then put their name on the back and also put their signature on the back? Do you have a recommendation?
You know, it's talking to some of these artists is like talking to the wall their painting is hanging on. Yes, you should have a legible signature. When I see a painting that's signed with somebody's first name, it yells out amateur. It's just like, Johnny painted this painting or Betty painted this painting. It's not supposed to please anybody but that immediate family. And if it's initials, it's like, how do I determine whose initials those are? And the first place I'd want to look is on the back and see if there's a full signature. If it's signed illegibly, I don't know. The whole point of being a professional artist is to have the buyer recognize your work. And to do that, they have to be able to essentially read your name. I mean, a lot of artists over time, people recognize their work by their style, but that's a rather, expert collector or art historian. But it has to start with a name. That's my feeling. And if there's more on the back, blessed, that's great. I'd like to know when it was painted. Part of the problem with dealing with the older paintings, take a guy like Edgar Payne. His early paintings usually have a date on them. But then after a certain period, he doesn't date the painting. And that's very common with artists.
So I had a gallery once tell me, do not put the date on the front of the painting, because if it's too old, it won't sell.
That's exactly what happens. Plus, if you're going to enter a big, important exhibition, they want current work. So if it's not dated, you could say, yeah, I painted that last month or something.
Yeah.
And very, very often, we had a William Wendt that was signed and dated twice with two different dates.
Really?
Two different exhibitions. So, and it's, you got to be careful. And then sometimes you see paintings that are very identical in period, in style, in color, in locale, but one of them is dated 20 years later. Again, it's because they needed to establish a date to get it into an exhibition.
Never thought of that.
No.
So talk about keeping records as an artist. You actually discovered, from what I understand, the Franz Bischoff collection, and ended up doing a book on that. And essentially you made Franz Bischoff famous, from what my understanding, or took it to a higher level. Yeah. Talk to me about archiving your work and the things that you need to be doing in terms of your records and so on.
Well, usually and historically, it's the spouse that does the record keeping. And that was the case with Charlie Russell. When he married his wife, she said, "You just go paint, I'll take care of everything else." Because prior to that, he would give his, paintings to the local saloon because he ran up a tab or something. But you need to keep an accurate log of what you painted. which means somewhere there's either a number on that painting or there's a title or something to identify it, as opposed to every other, morning sunrise that you've painted for the last 20 years. So, and then a lot of artists in the past have little inventory numbers on their paintings. Anna Hills was wonderful for doing that. She always had an inventory number on the back of her paintings. So you need to do that, and with the understanding that one of these days you may be famous and somebody may be writing a book about you in the future.
I think a lot of us, and without talking about negative thinking, I think a lot of us believe that, that nobody's ever going to really care. Yet there are numerous examples through history where somebody painted their whole life, never showed their work. They died and they were discovered and found out to be brilliant.
Yeah, that's the case. I was called one day about 40 years ago by a relative of Arthur Ryder, his stepson. And I had never heard of Arthur Grover Ryder. And he lived in a different city. And I said, well, if I ever come your way, I'll call you. So I called him one day and went to visit him. And I was amazed. It was the most gorgeous thing I have ever seen. Arthur Grover Ryder, one of the most important painters, brings a lot of money now. But when I walked into that man's condo, nobody wanted those things. But they were gorgeous. And the reason is that he worked full time for MGM. That was his profession. And he was there all the time. He did the backgrounds for movies like Forbidden Planet, like The Yellow Brick Road, all those things. And they never got credited in those days. Today, you need a second box of popcorn to see all the credits because everybody's listed. But in those days, it was just the director, the executive director of that division or something. So it does happen. It happens a lot. And,
But whatever happened to those hand-painted backgrounds in Hollywood?
I have a feeling they were just painted over because they needed the material for the next film.
So the other thing is photographing. There's a story about the Jerome Collection that went to Oakland. Do you know the story?
Yeah.
So the collection was my understanding, a guy was going to buy the collection, had moved a big part of the collection to his house, but hadn't yet paid for it. And then the Oakland fires hit and the entire collection was destroyed.
Yeah, that was the late Walter Nelson Reese. I had sold him several very important paintings, a really beautiful early Guy Rose that's gone, an early Granville Redmond that's destroyed. And the real tragedy is that he was not insured. So all those paintings, like you said, the collection, he had other paintings on consignment because they were an art dealer. They went by WIM. And he had to pay all those people back out of their own pockets, he and his partner. So
talk to me about insurance, because that's something that never really gets talked about. How difficult is that? Do you have to document each painting and have an art expert value the painting? How does that work?
It depends on the value of the painting. If it's, a painting I just bought from Kevin McPherson, a beautiful painting, the bill of sale will serve as the insurance appraisal. And sometimes they'll let you add 25, 30% of that because they figure, you won't be renewing it for 3-4 years and the value may go up. So, but in an antique painting, an old painting, it can be very difficult. You have to establish authenticity. And even after you do that, you got to figure out how much is it worth. Is it an auction price? Is it a retail price? Is it the price you get when you take it to a dealer and sell it to them and then they double the price and sell it later? So there's a lot of problems. But as far as I'm concerned with my paintings, the biggest problem, nobody runs down the street with a painting under their arm after they stole it. It just doesn't work. Fire is the big problem. Fire is what destroys a lot of paintings, as in the Oakland fire. And you want to be insured because essentially because of just in case there's a fire. And we live in Southern California, and California right now there's a group of fires going around. So just protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can get a blanket policy, but I think it's pretty hard to document that. Now, I don't know if you know the answer to this. Maybe I should get an insurance expert on the show. But, I'm looking around here in my studio and I've got 500 paintings in the room, maybe 1,000 paintings in the room. Some of them are good. Some of them are memories. Some of them are awful. But is there any way to insure our own work?
Well, you can insure anything you want. You just figure out how to pay for it. I remember one time a collector I knew was a bit shady. He exhibited this huge painting in a shopping mall and drew a lot of people. And I asked him, I said, people said they wouldn't let him in unless he could prove it was insured. And this was in Southern California. He insured it for snow damage. So that's how he proved it was insured. But, you pay for what you get if you want to insure it. People insure their arms, they insure their eyes. It depends who is going to take on the policy.
Yeah, I know it. You and I are insuring our six-pack abs.
I catch that in long ago.
So, well, that good advice all around. So going back to the idea of the judging art shows, when you're judging a show, there's two different ways you're judging. You're either judging in person or you're judging online, right?
Well, you jury online generally.
Jurying online,
yeah,
right. But if you're judging something like Plein Air Salon, you're actually looking at the images online.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts or tips about how things stand out in that environment? Because I've noticed when I do judging online, sometimes you're looking at a small image on a screen. You usually can click through to it and get a bigger image. But, if you're judging 2,500 paintings, you're probably trying to get through that and kind of weed out the bad stuff first. Are you not?
Well, I tell you, the most important thing for the artist is to get a really good photo. I have judged paintings and, online, and it's out of focus next, or it's a little bit crooked, or the colors are too dark. I don't know. I have to judge what I see.
Right.
And if the colors are actually that dark, then there's a problem. So get a great photograph. Even if you have to pay a professional photographer, get a really good. Don't just take your little camera and take a quick picture.
I had a photographer come in and photograph my entire collection, which is over 400 paintings, and they set up a tripod. They set up special lights that kept it from getting glare. They had polarizer filters. They had high res. And, they did a photograph of the front and the back of every painting. And then we put it into Artwork Archive, which is a really terrific software for keeping track of these things. And I had them also photograph all my paintings. But then, that happened 3 years ago. I haven't documented everything since that. And there is a tendency once in a while to give away a painting or to sell a painting and forget to document it. So it's hard to keep up on.
It's not easy, and the artist is busy painting. So as I said, the spouse usually takes on those responsibilities. They're the personal art representative for the artist, but it's a visual medium, and you have to have a good photograph.
Well, that's the mark of a pro right off the top, is to have really good photographs. And the other thing is that one day you may want to do a book, and if you've got low res photos from your phone or something, it's not necessarily going to be good. Now, iPhone has gotten so much better. It's really good, but there's such a huge difference. An iPhone, I can blow it up to 8x10 with preserving quality, but if I use a really good camera, I can blow it up to 30x40 and have good quality. And so that makes a big difference in printing ultimately, especially if you want to crop things.
Absolutely. But you also brought up glare, and polarizing the camera, polarizing filter, polarizing the lights eliminates the glare. And again, that's another tip off for me, whether it's a homemade photograph, it looks like it's snowing in the background.
Right.
But when we took pictures at the Irvine Museum, and before that, when I was at Peterson Galleries, it was a professional photo lab. It was polarized everything. It was, in those days, we had 5 transparencies made of each painting, because when you send it to a client, they'd sometimes never come back. When you send it to a magazine, they sometimes never come back. So, but that's the old days. With the digital, it's a lot simpler, and it can be stored a lot easier. You don't need to have big file cabinets. But it is a visual medium, and you're selling light, you're selling vision, you're selling an objective scene. And if you have to send a photograph to somebody, it has to be as good as it can be.
You once told me we were at the Plein Air convention, and I remember you telling me 2 things that stuck in my head. One was something that you said about the value of the Plein Air convention in the future, but historically. But the other was, you said, I remember we were in the exhibit hall and you were pointing, you said, there's some people out here in this exhibit hall who are attending for the first time, they're painting for the first time, that will one day be famous painters. Do you want to speak to that for just a second?
Well,
remember that?
It's the type of thing. An artist is made up of a gift, talent, but most important, it has to have the craft. It has to have the knowledge of how to use your tools. And if you have only one of those, you may not be there. So a lot of younger artists, they have the talent, they just never tried it out. They never had anybody guide them to how to start and to what to do. This is the value of your plein air convention, is you listen to an actual artist that's done this all their life. And he or she will give you all sorts of information that will allow you to develop your talent and to learn your craft. So you have to start somewhere. And there's no better way to start than with somebody that's done it all their lives and is famous for what they're doing.
Yeah, I think this, there's a badge that a lot of artists like to wear that is, I'm self-taught. And I know many are, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I think that, if you can invest a few hours watching a video, going to a live event, going to a workshop, you are going to save so much time, because being self-taught is great, except there may be lessons you're never going to learn because somebody else has figured those out. And if you just go to those people, I've talked to people like T. Allen Lawson or George Carlson, some of our greats, and they say, I realized that this artist did something with clouds that I could never figure out. I studied their paintings, I looked at them, I still couldn't figure it out. So I actually went to their workshops. These are highly accomplished artists who are getting big dollars for their paintings, and they're still trying to go and learn from somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is self-taught unless you're in an island all by yourself. My feeling is the best way to learn is to look at art, and that's education right there. And when we have artists come into the museum, you can spot them immediately, because they'll be frozen in front of a painting for 5-10 minutes. And they want to see, how did this artist do this that they cannot do? And they're learning by looking. And if you attend a conference, you're learning. If you talk to an artist, you're learning. So it's self-taught is essentially, they didn't go through a formal education program.
Yeah.
They did learn. And the best way to learn, in my opinion, other than to go through a formal education program, is to look critically and to say, wow, that artist did something I would love to know how to do. So, and artists get in front of our paintings and you can spot them, because they're really looking, because they want to know how it was done, and they're learning right there.
One of the things that I think is a bit of a phenomenon, and this is going to sound a little self-promotional, forgive me for that, but I look at the artists who I met for the first time at Plein Air Convention, who were they were there for the first time. I won't use names. I was thinking of a couple of names, and I'm sure you're thinking of some of the same ones. That they were on the right road, but they were still underdeveloped, and they kept coming back year after year. And now 9 years later, some of those same people that were there for the first time are actually on the stage teaching.
Yeah.
And then I also look at the people who come to these painters retreats like the Adirondacks or Fall Color Week, who I will use the name in this particular case, Charlie Hunter. Charlie Hunter came because somebody said to him, you ought to go to this to learn about this whole plein air thing, because he knew nothing about it, from my understanding. He was already a well-trained, Yale-trained artist, accomplished, and he came to this event in the Adirondacks, and he got noticed. All of a sudden, everybody's saying, they're giving him encouragement. You need to go and enter this show or that show. You need to do this. We ended up seeing him, watching how people were drawn to his work. So we ended up doing an article on him. And I can tell you that this has happened 30 times to people who have just shown up, who ended up, they're starting to get recognized. Barbara Tapp was one of those people who has always been a home illustrator, but has become a watercolorist, and then her work keeps going up. And so seeing it year after year at Fall Color Week, for instance, all of a sudden now she got put on the stage. Or Lon Brower. Lon Brower came to the Adirondacks last year. I didn't know Lon Brower existed. I don't know how I missed it, but he's so fabulous that I put him on the faculty. So those kinds of things are happening as well. So no one should ever assume that staying home in their little cocoon is going to be best for them. What do you see are the things that are best for building an artist's career?
Well, remember, we had a talk several years ago. I told you about an artist that I know very well here in Orange County. And I asked the artist, how many times you've been to the convention? There's nothing I can learn from that type of thing. And this artist has been in judgings that I've handled many times, and they have never gotten recognition. They could be a lot better if they had some real serious instruction about they're almost there, but they're not quite there.
The problem is that you don't know when you're not there.
No, and artists, you have to have a self-confidence that's really big, and you feel you don't need it. You don't need it because, heck, you're doing a good job. Your friends are buying the paintings. Why should you go and spend money to maybe get better or maybe not? So
I noticed something. I think I told you this, is that I sat down one year about 3-4 years ago, and I said, I'm just not there. I've been painting for a lot of years. I'm just not there. I can't put in the time. I know I need 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a couple of years before I could really get to the level I want to get to. But I thought, if I can't put in the time, at least I can put in a little time to get some better instruction. And so I said to myself, okay, what do I want to accomplish? I said, I want to be able to be a better landscape painter, and I want to be a better portrait painter. And so I thought, okay, who are the two people that I admire the most? And there's so many I admire, but who is accomplishing what I kind of envision, what I want to accomplish. I don't want to copy them. And so I picked two artists. I contacted them, and I paid them personally to come and spend a week with me and study with me. And that made such a huge difference, because it was so different than just being in a workshop where you're not getting all the attention. And it was, devoting myself to learning that one particular thing and then sticking with the palette. And what I noticed is that the compliments changed. It went from, oh, pretty colors, to who did that painting? Where did you buy that? And actual true enthusiasm. And those are the clues that I started noticing that made a difference. Now, I still have, lots of growth that I still want to accomplish. But it's that investing in yourself, however you have to do it. You know, not everybody can do that. Not everybody can go to a workshop, but pretty much everybody can at least get a video. And even if you can't get a full length, you know, well-produced video from us or somebody else, you can at least get a 30-minute segment of something on YouTube, or watch the free stuff that we're doing.
I've talked to a lot of young artists that say they love your videos because you have the very best artists. And they're talking directly to the viewer, essentially. It's a one-on-one situation. So it's a wonderful thing you're doing.
Well, one of the things I noticed too is that when I studied with this one artist, after I painted for about 6 months, I had a lot of questions that I couldn't remember the answers to. And so I happened to have a video with that artist. So I just pulled out the video and watched it. And all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, that. And the nice thing about these videos is you can go back time and time again, because we don't recognize certain things until we've accomplished certain things. And then we need to get to the next level. We don't know how to get there. But all that data is there. You might not notice it or recognize it when you're going through it.
Yeah, growth is very hard to spot because it's so gradual, so subtle.
So we're down to our last 2 or 3 minutes. Do you have
paintings?
I'm sorry?
I want to show you some paintings.
Okay, make it fast because YouTube is going to cut us off. And
no. Over the years, I collected. Years ago, when I was an art dealer, occasionally a miniature would come in. And those would be very hard to sell, so I just took them home. And I've got several of them, and I want to show. This is by William Wendt.
Wait, I'm going to put this on full screen so we can see it. Oh, that's beautiful. Hold it still right there. Wow.
And this is like 4x6. But the good thing about it is William Wendt took our advice and wrote all sorts of stuff on the back.
Wow.
Actually,
1922.
Yeah, 1922. And this was a painting that was done to raise money to build what is now the Laguna Art Museum.
Wow. That's
so another one of my favorite miniatures.
Would you leave that to me in your will, please?
You'll have to talk to my daughters.
Okay. Well, I'll outlive them all.
This is a Granville Redmond.
Wow.
This is about the only Redmond I can afford.
Now, why is that under glass?
That's the original frame. And in some cities like San Francisco, London, New York, there's a lot of junky air, a lot of cold smoke, and you have to protect it. And that's the easiest way to do it. Now, I'm also collecting works by some of the living artists. This is from a good friend of ours named Fernando Micheli.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That's a sketch.
Very nice.
And then on the back is all sorts of stuff. Where it was painted, the date, there's a dedication. It's nice if you get a dedication because that adds to the value when your kids are going to sell it.
Yeah, I see a flaw there. He does his copyright wrong. We're going to have a talk with him.
Okay.
You have to write the year and you have to write your full name.
Well,
okay.
That's something most artists don't do. So teach them.
All right. Well, I have some miniatures around here too. I can't get to them to pull them out, but I think it's nice, and one artist that came to visit left me with a miniature, and it's a nice gift. It's very personal, and it's nice to have those things. Well, thank you so much, John, for your time today and for coming in and getting up. And I know you probably sleep till 10 or 11 o'clock in California every day.
No, I was really eager to do this. You give us so much exposure. You give the artists, you give the art historians. It's really great because I can reach a lot of people that I don't know who they are, and maybe I can teach them something. Yeah. Maybe I can encourage them to do something.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on today.
My pleasure, Eric.
Thank you to Linda too. Bye-bye. Well, that was Jean Stern, Director Emeritus of the Irvine Museum, a fabulous art historian. And thank you so much to Jean. A reminder that August 30th is the deadline date to sign up for Realism Live. Get that done. Also, August 31st, the last chance to enter the Plein Air Salon for this month. Get your entries in. Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher of Plein Air and Fine Art Connoisseur magazines. Have a great day. Keep your head in the game. Bye.